Circles of Support and Accountability is a reintegration program based on restorative justice principles for people who have been convicted and incarcerated, specifically for committing sexual offenses, but they've often had a longer criminal career with other offenses. But that is the main criteria, I guess, for CoSA. And these people approach CoSA voluntarily, so it's not mandated by the, a judicial order or parole board of Canada. So they come to CoSA voluntarily to get help in their reintegration process, I guess, to develop a meaningful life and to stay out of prison and to avoid reoffending, obviously. Also to avoid breaching legal conditions, which is often a stumbling block, right, for them. So the way CoSA works is community members are trained as volunteers, and typically 3 or 4 volunteers are assigned to one core member. That's how we refer to our clients. Okay. And that forms a circle, and everybody involved signs a circle agreement that lasts for a period of 1 year. And it outlines the responsibilities and expectations, the promise of confidentiality. So what's discussed in circle meetings stays there. There is definitely in that agreement the limits to confidentiality as well. So if there's good reason to believe that the core member has breached a legal condition, or certainly reoffended, or there's a community member at risk of being harmed, that we have a duty to report. And the core member is informed of this at the outset, and they understand that we will do this. We can and we will. And we work very closely with community partners, though. So we don't work in a therapeutic manner. We're not, that's not what our volunteers do. They work more, I guess, as role models, sort of mentors to the core member, helping them, identify and achieve goals. Short, medium, long-term goals, which is kind of the circle's roadmap in their work. So there's a lot of support, and it varies from core member to core member. Some core members are very high functioning. They get, they have a checklist. They get it all done within the first week, month. Others are, need a lot more help. So the needs, I guess, vary from core member, but there's also accountability, right? So if they're making decisions, that the volunteers deem problematic, that could, send them off the rails, or, put them back in prison, or that they're going to challenge them. And I would say that is, that's what I refer to as tough on crime. Yeah. This is tough. This is a tough program to be in for the core members, especially when they first start. They're expected to do a disclosure, the first or second meeting. Can you imagine sitting there with a bunch of strangers and disclosing the worst thing that you have ever done? Wow. To strangers, and we expect this of them. So, but I think it's really important to do that because, well, first of all, it's really important for the volunteers to understand where they're coming from, not only in terms of their own trauma, because I do believe that anybody who's been to prison has suffered trauma, But the triggers, the risk factors, the volunteers really need to be privy to. So there's that, you know, a factor in this disclosure requirement to do a disclosure, but also once they have done this, you know, story disclosure, and they see that the volunteers are still supporting them in spite of this terrible story they've told them, I think that in itself is trust building, you know, and so that's really the pillar that this program works on, is the development of strong trust, and you know, and so I think that's really important. Yeah. So that's basically it. I did mention the professionals that we work with. So, you know, a lot of our guys go to the Royal Ottawa Sexual Behaviors Clinic, the programs with Dr. Fedorov, for instance. A lot of them rely on services with John Howard. Most of them are on parole or probation. And so we work with, you know, POs. Some of them are not on, you know, supervision that way, but they might be under an 810 order that's supervised, overseen, I guess, not supervised, but overseen by the police. So we have a close relationship with the high risk offender unit at the police. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'm wondering if you have recent or current data on success rate for CoSA Canada-wide and for CoSA Ottawa, just an idea of how, what your success rate would be.
Yeah, and thanks for reminding me about CoSA across Canada, because we are not solely an Ottawa operation. I mean, we are the Ottawa branch, certainly, but there are CoSA sites right across Canada in, well, under 15 different sort of umbrellas that operate in about 30 cities.
Wow.
Yeah. So the success rate, there has been quite extensive research on the success of CoSA, and it's shown somewhere between sort of 80 to 88% reduction of recidivism. That's which is not surprising, really. You know, when you weigh support, no support, you know, everybody does better with support.
Yes.
Regardless of what it's for, right? So, or who we are. And in Ottawa, we've been operating, I guess we started in about 1998 in Ottawa, sort of not an official program, you know, with a coordinator or funding. That came about in 2002, and that's when I was hired. But since it started, to my knowledge anyway, we've worked with over 60, 65 or so core members.
Okay.
And only 2 have been convicted of a subsequent sexual offense. And the seriousness, I have to say, the seriousness of those charges were much less
good.
Serious, which I guess is a factor in itself. But I think that's a pretty good success rate in itself. That sort of.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm just wondering whether, Maxime, do you have any questions for Susan?
Actually, no, that was just going to be my question, because I was reading the annual report and I was seeing that 80%. I was just about to ask the sample size of it, because obviously that makes a big difference. And just like we were discussing the other day, Carl, and I want to ask you guys this question. What factors do you take in consideration when looking at recidivism rates? Because me and Carl were saying, like, as you mentioned, less serious crimes, would you consider that a success or not as well? Or someone staying out on average 1 year versus
Mhm.
5 years, right? Extending that time that they're out and staying, clean or whatever. I was wondering what your guys' thoughts were on that. Is that still a success in your opinion, or?
Oh, I would say so. A reduction of seriousness. I mean, in one case, the offenses were against children, direct contact, and his subsequent charge or conviction was a touch of a woman's breast. And that is, indictable, but nevertheless, it's much less serious. There's no question. But he needed to be taught a lesson, and so he did go back to prison for several months for that, and then was on probation for 3 years. So now the second part of your question, Maxim.
It was like the time, right? Like
The
for
time, yes, yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I can't really comment on the time. I haven't done a sort of that research myself. And I haven't sometimes, well, we are in touch with core members who graduate from CoSA, and to my knowledge, there've been no slips, so I believe they're continuing to not reoffend, but sometimes you lose contact with them, and but I haven't heard about them, in the media or through the grapevine sort of thing. So
the studies are largely independent studies, though. They're not carried out by us. I mean, we keep statistics, yes, but the recidivism aspect are independent academic studies. It'd be great to share those with you.
Yeah. Sounds good.
And I think, Susan, I'd like to add, in terms of the support, how much effort and commitment and compassion from the volunteers, because when Susan mentioned 3 or 4 volunteers in the circle, that means that these people commit over, as she mentioned, a year to meet individually every week with that core member in a group meeting. So that's 5 meetings a week. So there's a lot of ongoing discussion, a lot of as she said, role modeling. And what we have found is that CoSA is, because of the independent studies, well regarded enough that it's propagated in other countries. So it's in the UK, it's international, it's Australia, New Zealand, some states. So there's a lot of academic papers on it that perhaps can be helpful, and particularly the Good Life model. I'm rather new at being a volunteer. I'm on the board of directors, but I'm new at being a volunteer as well. But the Good Life model, when I saw it, I thought, I could have used that, bring up my own teenager. I mean, it's great. It's fabulous. It's actually helping people structure their lives. Where do you want to go? Which steps do you need to take? And then to continue the dialogue on how that's coming along. So it's the tools that we developed and the processes to support CoSA are really, really interesting.
Thank you so much. If you had links that you could send us by email, or just give us some clues as to what direction to take to look at success rates for CoSA and the independent studies, that would be very valuable to us.
Now, you work mainly with chaplains, so you may not have the same challenges we have. Susan, through CoSA Ottawa puts on a really interesting training program. So there are monthly dialogue and presentations and so on various topics on how to deal with trauma, for example. But there's also fantastic training programs on being an active bystander. How do you deal with aggression? How do you help direct people? your network or your chaplains, of course, would have a different background and already be aware of many of those aspects. But that's also, I think, a critical success factor.
Thank you. For clarification, chaplains are just a small part of the whole network. So we're in contact with a whole lot of organizations that are working with inmates on the inside and when they get released. So your input and anything that you send our way would be very relevant, and we'd appreciate that. Thank you.